What's up, guys? Before we jump into it, just want to let you know that there's a flash 30% off discount with code ESPRESSO over at gfuel.com. With new releases like Sour Faceberry and cans like Sour Blue Chug Rug out, if you're interested, now's as good a time as any to check them out. Links in the description below, but anyways, let's get back to the content at hand. The other day we talked about the best weapons in Modern Warfare with Season 4, but in that one we specifically designated our choices and any preferred builds for multiplayer. Doing so to take a look at what a lot of you guys may have been interested in outside of Warzone, but today I want to take a look at the 5 best weapons and loadouts of Season 4 for Warzone in particular. So today I hope to give you an accurate representation of some loadouts, builds, and weapon choices overall that will give you the best firepower and possible chances for winning your games. I think later in the season we'll revisit some of the lesser used but still incredible builds as we did with last season, but for now let's start at the very top. That said, as we go along, let me know your thoughts down below on what you think of this list. Anything you'd add, subtract, whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. But as well, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you have not done so already to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare and Warzone on a daily basis. But with that said, let's jump into it. First, I'm not sure if I want to take this in the same direction in the direct ranking format as we did with the MP top 5, because Warzone presents a lot more situational engagements than opposed to MP and a much smaller scale of combat. But I think that how we present it today could be a loose ranking of a 1 to 5, with of course these potentially shifting in specific engagements rather than overall top-down perspective of versatile usability, trying to accommodate everything in one sweep. But first and foremost, I absolutely see the Grau as number 1. This I don't think should be any surprise. It's probably what you're seeing a lot of kill cams with, perhaps maybe seeing a lot of use from yourself even, but as we mentioned in our MP video, it's very much the same case. It's the jack-of-all-trades rifle, and especially when in Warzone you want something that can get the job done, this is definitely it. When you think about it, this is actually something that could even be a substitute for long-range play. You don't need any sort of sniper rifle because, well, you can snipe with the Grau. This thing kitted out, which how I prefer to kit it out we'll get to in just a second, is literally a laser beam that shoots straight as an arrow. When you add in the rate of fire, damage output, and all factors in, you're going to win the majority of your gunfights you engage with if you hit your shots and play it smart. It's just not even fair sometimes to go up against it, but it's by and far my number 1 here in Warzone. Second place that comes to my mind is the MP5, which, as we mentioned again in the MP video, is the jack-of-all-trades SMG. Same exact situation. It's a pickup and melt machine. Not to mention that it has some damn good range if you need it to, but it's mobile, agile, and you mix it with a decent round count for taking down multiple enemies in a fight if needed, and you got yourself a product that will absolutely shred through your enemies. As we'll discuss in the loadouts portion of this video in just a little bit, you'll be next to unstoppable if you take this with, say, a Grau or another top weapon that we'll discuss here in this video. Taking one as your mid to long range and then this is your CQB weapon, that's where you're gonna thrive. But definitely the MP5 is a top 3 in most cases. I'd say top 2 though. Next we have the CR56, and the CR56 is the one exception in my mind that breaks the 50 or 60 round rule that I kind of have for Warzone, where the 50 to 60 round magazine attachments are almost the crutch attachments for loadouts, but the CR56 only has 45. But it's incredible. You can absolutely beam players at a distance with this thing. You can shred them up close. You put on the VLK optic, you have a sight that mitigates recoil, plus also gives you that precision. It's just incredible. With the build we'll talk about in a second, it's one that will absolutely shred your enemies up close or at a distance. So we'll get there in a second. But number 4 up on this list, I'd say, is the M4A1. That one still being such a great rifle and such a great option for any loadout, but I just have come to prefer the 3 that we discussed a little bit further. We've talked about the M4 a ton in the past, so I don't want to really go too far into depth here with it. But again, jack of all trades rifle. Nothing is really standout, and therefore it doesn't have any glaring downsides where there's any glaring positives. So it's just something that can absolutely shred through enemies, close quarters, mid-range, or long range. Doesn't really matter the engagement. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is one that I think is still relatively slept on, but has gotten some attention here in the last season or so, is the M13. This is one that I would more so run for a longer range setup. Being that it isn't the greatest rifle up close or even at mid-range, at long range though, it excels. That damage drop-off and headshot modifier is something that makes this, at a distance, something that if you have an accurate shot, you're going to beam anybody that you may be going up against, especially if they don't have something like a sniper rifle. Not to mention the recoil is next to nothing on the M13, so it's incredible for those long range engagements. That's the top 5, and like we said, it is something that becomes really tough to pinpoint down, maybe say the top 5. So some honorable mentions I would definitely throw in the mix here are the Ram 7, again, another jack of all trades rifle that was the first weapon to really be introduced to combat the M4A1, but the Grau has since taken that spot. The Kilo's pretty good. I'm just not really a huge fan of it overall personally, but from a viability perspective, it is absolutely a weapon you could use. The Fennec is one that if you want to dominate close quarters, absolutely you won't be beaten here at this one, but you're going to be hard-pressed to get 2-3 kills off at a time. Plus, it doesn't have all that great of range, so it's a very situational weapon. The MP7 is still one that I really enjoy, but it's been getting me a lot more hit markers as of late. And then the AUG with 5.56 rounds, I know we've mentioned in the past, has been a fantastic option. I've used that one less and less as of late, but it's still a very viable option also. But let's talk about loadouts here. Let's talk about how you actually run these in-game and what will give you that best opportunity to win. Let's start out with my top loadout, the one that, honestly, I run all the time if I want to go for higher kills or if I just want to play full-on aggressive and slay out. Not necessarily play any sort of support role, but just jumping right into the action. To this, we end up running an overkill class setup of the top two weapons in my books, the Grau 5.56 and the MP5. As with a couple of other loadouts, we'll end up seeing that we utilize multiple weapons of the same builds in different loadouts in some cases, but running down the attachments here in this build that may be transferred over to others, for the MP5, I end up running the monolithic integral suppressor, the tac laser, the Merc foregrip, the 45-round magazine, and the stippled grip tape. Now, the monolithic integral suppressor actually offers all the same benefits as the monolithic suppressor, but also negates some of those downsides that you'd get with just the monolithic suppressor. Whereas with the monolithic suppressor, you'd end up losing out on aim down sight speed and aim walking steadiness for the addition of sound suppression and damage range. But if you end up running the integral suppressor, you get that sound suppression and bullet velocity, but only lose out on the ADS speed. You don't lose any of that movement speed, which is awesome. The tac laser is something that I helped to try and get this weapon to aim down sight a little bit faster. And the nice part is the laser is only visible when ADSing, so it's only one of those things that unless I'm pre-aiming a corner where somebody may run through, I won't really give my position away all that much like the 5 milliwatt laser. The Merc foregrip is for better recoil control and hip fire accuracy, and both of those with the MP5 are absolutely a must-have in my opinion. The 45-round magazine is something that I like to have as much ammo as possible within Warzone. Again, because there is armor in play, it's going to take about double the shots that it normally would in MP. And while the 30-round mags are viable in terms of adding damage and range, I like to have more ammo on hand rather than less. So I take the 45 round for that one, and then the stippled grip tape again, just giving us a little bit more of that ADS bonus. For the Grau, we end up running the monolithic suppressor, the Tempest 26.4 Archangel barrel, the Commando foregrip, the 50-round magazines, and the Cronin Sniper Elite. Now the monolithic suppressor run on everything, absolutely, but that sound suppression and damage range is added in with this. The Archangel barrel gives us damage range, bullet velocity, and some recoil control, being a heavier barrel out of the bunch, and I like the Archangel a little bit better just because of the iron sights that it gives. A little bit more pinpoint, precise, accurate than that of, say, the Nexus barrel, in my opinion. The Commando foregrips do offer a little bit more recoil stabilization and aiming stability. The 50-round mags, not only just because I've used the 50 for so long that I don't necessarily notice the 50 to 60 on the Grau in particular, plus I like the camo that comes along with the blueprint I have. Not even gonna lie about that one. And the Cronin Sniper Elite for the grip for a little bit more aiming stability and walking steadiness at the slight sacrifice of walking movement speed. But again, kitting this out that way is something that will give you a weapon that has zero recoil and can absolutely beam any enemy you go up against. Now to close out this loadout, we end up running Cold-Blooded, Overkill, and Tracker, though to be honest, I have been since switching to EOD rather than Cold-Blooded. I've opted to not really caring about showing up on thermals because I feel like I don't show up on those a whole lot in engagements anymore, so EOD for that explosive resistance is absolutely key. Then C4 is a lethal and a heartbeat sensor is a tactical. The next loadout that we end up running is a dual overkill setup of the M4A1 and the MP5. Everything built out exactly the same except for the M4A1, to which for the M4A1, I end up running the monolithic suppressor, the Corvus custom barrel, the Forged Tac CQS stock, the 60-round magazines, and the stippled grip tape. Now the monolithic suppressor, of course, for everything, we run that damage, range, and sound suppression. The Corvus custom marksman gives us damage, range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. The Forged Tac CQS just gives us a little bit more in that ADS speed, as does the stippled grip tape, and the 60-round magazine to guarantee us enough ammunition for just about any engagement we may come across. Closing that out with, again, Cold-Blooded or EOD, Overkill, and then Tracker, and a C4 as the lethal and a tactical of a heartbeat sensor. The third loadout that I have here on deck that has honestly, I think, become my favorite as of lately, and is one that I've been playing around with the most, is that of an Overkill loadout that is very similar to, again, the ones we just just mentioned, but instead of an M4 or a Grau, we end up running the CR56, to which that is overkilled with an MP5. So I use the CR56 for that medium to long range, which it can absolutely handle, and then the MP5 for close quarters. Since we know of the MP5 build and the rest of the perks and everything going out with that one, the CR56 is the only thing that I really feel I need to mention here at this, the build being the monolithic suppressor, the XRK Zodiac S440 barrel, the VLK 3x optic, the 45 round magazine, and the XRK CR56 rubberized wrap for grip. The monolithic suppressor, of course, sound suppression, damage range, but the XRK Zodiac barrel is the only barrel offered on the CR56 that will offer damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. So unlike, say, the Grau and the M4A1, you don't have two different barrels to kind of go back and forth between on which one is better for range and kitting it out for medium to long range, but makes that choice a little easier. The VLK 3x optic, though, is one that I like for the precision of things, but also because while it is not listed in the game stats, it actually is something that mitigates recoil a little bit, offering a little bit more stabilization for those first few shots. So absolutely something you want to put on this, especially if you're using an optic already, and also may answer the question as to why you're seeing the VLK so much as of late. The 45 round magazine, again, just to give as much ammo as possible, and the rubberized wrap for extra recoil control. Like I mentioned, this has quickly become one of my favorite builds here in all of Warzone, so absolutely recommend this one. And the final loadout, talking about our top 5 weapons here that I've been running, is the M13, actually dueled with an overkill of an HDR, though we talked about in the actual rankings that it's best at range here for the M13, but I still like to run this as my overall long range marksman class setup. I don't really use this one unless I am the designated sniper and marksman here for this, so it allows me to take all engagements at a long range. But for the M13, I run the monolithic suppressor, the Tempest marksman, the GI mini reflex, the 60 round magazine, and the stippled grip tape. All of these are pretty much self-explanatory. Monolithic suppressor, Tempest marksman gives us, again, that damage range. GI mini reflex gives us that ability to have a little bit more pinpoint precise of an accurate shot, but the VLK 3x is also an awesome option here for this one. 60 rounds to allow us to unload on the enemy, and stippled grip tape to give us a little bit of a quicker ADS time, though the attachments here that we run often mitigate the recoil itself, so we don't need any under barrel grip or anything like that. And just for the sake of clarity, for that sniper build, I've run the monolithic suppressor, the 26.9 HDR Pro barrel, a thermal scope, still the FTAC Stalker Scout for a little bit in terms of ADS speed, and then sleight of hand for a quicker reload. I personally prefer the HDR because it has a better bullet velocity than that of the AX50. The AX50 at its base has a little bit faster of an ADS speed, but it doesn't have a bullet velocity as fast as the HDR, so there's a less lead period that you need with the HDR as opposed to the AX50. But everything in terms of the perks and lethals and tacticals run exactly the same here at this. While every class that we've listed here so far has dealt with overkill, I do run one class that I quickly switch to with Ghost and EOD on it, so that when I pick up my secondary loadout, the free one that often drops in, I can end up getting the perks that I like of Ghost, but also having two primary weapons as opposed to just one. But that's the top 5 weapons and the top 5 loadouts that I would recommend here within Warzone, especially within Season 4, so that's going to wrap up this video. I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this list? Do you think I'm missing any glaring obvious answers? Do you think I'm spot on? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts down below, and also maybe what your top 5 is in the comments. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here on the channel, so if any of that interests you, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. What else to send out with? Thank you guys all so much for watching. Linus with Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.